Welcome back to our study in the book of Romans. This is Sonship Establishment, and this is session 4. We've been talking about how this whole section in Romans chapter 8, verses 28 through 39, are designed to produce a particular attitude in us, a particular confidence in us, in our Father and in His curriculum, to the extent that no matter what happens to you, you will continue your sonship education. That, I've just told you now something about the particular kind of confidence that's going to be built into you. So now what I'd like to do is take us back to verse 28 and let us take a look at how this section gets started. I just need to catch us up to where we were. Here we are. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose. And even though this verse is very popular, for many people they would claim this as their favorite verse, what is really contained in this verse is missing for most people. I'm not saying that to be critical, but I'm saying that because if this verse is actually going to effectually work in you, you have to understand it for what it is, not for what you think it is. And so it's important for us to get this verse right. And as I pointed out in the last session, just to kind of get us back on track, without verses 29 and 30, you'll never understand why verse 28 is true. You can claim it all day long. You can use all the words, I'm standing on it, I'm walking in it, whatever you want to, terminology you want to use. If you don't understand it for what it is, it's not going to work in you. Because the way most people see this is when something bad happens, I'm just claiming all things are working together for good. And that's the way they see the verse, and that's the way they think about it. And if you, and look, I can't not say this way. You have to understand that verse 28 is true for the reasons that verses 29 and 30 tell you it's true. It's not just you believe it's true, but you have to believe it's true for these reasons, because that is the only way this is going to work in you. If you believe it for any other reason, it's not going to effectually work. And the confidence it's supposed to produce won't be there. And so that's why it's super important to understand the why and the how of all of that is, so that what you're believing is the right thing for the right reason. Now people look at verse 28 and here's how they think about it. When the tornado went through Oklahoma, some folks looked at that devastation and, trying to make sense out of it, they said, well, we don't know how, but I believe all things work together for good. Right? When the hurricane went through New Orleans, folks were saying the same thing. And if they'd ask them, how is it working for your good? They go, I don't know, God's ways are not our ways. And they'd be talking about that, but then they'd say, but it all works together for our good, and I believe that. All right, now I'm going to make a statement right here. And I want you to, I'm kind of jumping the gun on this statement. Unless you are a son or daughter being educated in the sonship education, all things are not working together for good. This verse is not a general statement. Do you realize the context you're in here? Since verses 14 and 15, you've been in a sonship context, and you haven't left it. So I'm going to tell you now, when someone is out there saying, well, all things work together for good, and they're using that, and you know what? To some degree, they're using that to get through some kind of hard time. What your Father means by work together for good is not happening for them. This is only happening for sons and daughters who are in the sonship education. That's the context that you find this, and that's what it's about. So you can say all day long, well, I just believe it's working together for good. You can memorize Romans 8:28. That's what I'm saying. You can claim it. You can stand on it. You can walk in it. But if you don't know why that's that way, it's not going to be working for your good. You can't know that. You can't know that. Now, it upsets the apple cart. But that I'm trying to get across to you how vital it is to not form our opinions about what's written in this book. Okay. By the way, that's not the part that I know that's a hard pill to swallow. But I'm going to tell you now that we have something even harder than that to talk about. All right. So, this question, let's do this. And we know. Here's another thing I have to clear up for you. When you read this, you're going to be tempted to say, oh, this is something we're already supposed to be aware of. And we know that, and if you read it that way, that's the way you would think about it. Oh, this is something I'm supposed to already know. But that's not what this is. This is a statement of confidence. Are you following? You have said before, there's something that you know, but you don't know it because it's an established fact. You know it because it's something you're sure of. And that's a different thing. I know what 2 and 2 is. That's something I've already come to understand. But I can say this too. Did you ever I gave one illustration in the notes, and I'm trying to think of a different one because I was real unhappy with that one. But have you ever had a situation arise where maybe you're going to meet someone somewhere and someone says, how do you know they're going to be there? And you say, I know they're going to be there. It's because, you're not saying you witnessed it so you're sure of it. You're saying, I have such confidence that I can say, I know that this particular thing is true. That's the kind of know that's being talked about here. You're not being told something that you're supposed to already be aware of. Verse 28, by the way, people are not aware of what verse 28 really is saying. I just got through spending 5 minutes telling you we don't know. So to turn around and say that means that we're supposed to already know it is not what's going on there. It's something that we are supposed to know because, in other words, we are sure, we have confidence. And that's what this whole section is built to do, is to produce a confidence. Okay, now just to move on from that, all I'm saying is when Paul says, and we know, all he's really talking about is that he has a conviction in his own heart about the truth of this matter. And it's been produced right out of those verses. Because look how the passage ends. Well, I don't have it on the board. But it ends with, for I am persuaded. So that's where it's all headed. I'm just trying to get a context for you in that. And if nothing else, other than 28, 29, and 30, if nothing else got said about this issue, that would be enough to persuade you that it is true. That would be enough. But now, in addition to that, you're given these 5 probing questions and the statements that go along with them, and that is going to come along and reinforce what was just given to you in 28, 29, and 30. And now, that brings me to the difficult part that I need to have a very sobering discussion with us about. And that is these 5 questions, in addition to what is done here, these 5 questions meant to reveal any doubt, any uncertainty, any reservation, and deal with it completely, has to be done because there are some things that you are going to encounter that if you don't have that particular kind of confidence, you will walk away from your sonship education. Now, I'm not talking about something that you and I will face today. But the time is coming in which we are going to come up against something. Your Father knows about it. He knows what He has called you to do. And let me just say it like this. There is no limit to the measures that are going to be taken to make you quit. There is no limit to that. Now, I'm trying hard not to say this in a wrong way because I'm not trying to talk anybody out of their sonship. Or we could just name the church the Corinthian church. But He also knows what this education is going to equip you to be able to do. Not just now, but also in eternity. And He is making it so this education produces an absolute certainty and an unwavering confidence that this curriculum is going to allow you to be able to do everything you're supposed to do, to endure whatever comes your way, and to do it successfully. Not just begrudgingly. I'm trying to think how I'm going to say this. I mean, I know I have notes and stuff on this, but you realize that what I'm about to talk to you about is not something you're going to encounter right now. But your Father's going to tell you something about it right now in your establishment to get rid of any reservation that may be there. This is going to be, I have all these cliches that are rattling around in my head. You know, I hear it like this. This is what, with all due respect to our ladies, this is what separates the men from the boys. You understand what that expression means? Okay, look, I don't know how else to do it except just talk to you frankly. In a group this size, it may be likely, in any group this size, it is likely that there is someone who is on board with the sonship education because there are elements of it that look very attractive. I mean, let's face it. Sitting in thrones of power in the heavenly places is a pretty attractive eternity. But if that's all it is, that is not going to be enough to get you through what's coming your way. Because the attractiveness of something out there is not going to help you when things start happening in the here and now. And when I say there is no measure that will not be taken to get you to walk away from this, I'm not exaggerating when I say that. Now, we live in a different time than the Apostle Paul, and we live in a different type of government. We live in a different kind of culture. But you know what? Not all of that works in our favor. In some areas it may, but in other areas it won't. So, trying to say this correctly and kind of guardedly, There are three, what's the word I want to use? Three entities that you're going to have to face. We've talked about two of them. We've talked about one of them a little, one of them a little more. We've talked about, for instance, take the one we've talked about the most. We've talked about the policy of evil. The policy of evil is the direct attack of the adversary on a son or daughter who has finally gotten to a place where they begin to impact his realm and what he's doing. You're the mosquito that got through the net, and now he has to pay personal attention to you because now you're the irritant. And because of that, the policy of evil, and listen, when this thing bears down, I didn't put it in the, just if you turn over to Romans 8, I didn't put it on the PowerPoint this way, but I'm going to say it to you this way. In Romans 8, I want you to look with me. I don't think I have it this way. Let's just look. No, I don't. In Romans chapter 8, in verse 35, who shall separate us from the love of Christ? There is someone who is going to separate you from the love of Christ. They're going to attempt to do that. And then look what the shall that follows is. Shall tribulation. That is a general heading that includes a lot of different things. You would look at all of them and say, you know what, that's just tribulations. That's troubles. That is the first step in the policy of evil. And you know if it's the policy of evil, who the who is behind it. That is the first step that he's going to use to make you walk away from your sonship life. If that doesn't work and you continue in your sonship education, he's going to ramp up to the next level of attack, which is distress. And that's going to be beyond just tribulation. Now it's in distress. Now, I'm going to wait until we get down to this passage to actually talk about the details of it, but just noticing the progression of it. The next one is persecution. Now that's the third step. And that means that you're being singled out. We have not, no matter what people in this town think about us or say about us, we have not endured real persecution. Let's be honest. The things that are said about us are probably also being said about other churches that are not sonship churches. This persecution is going not just to be general, it's going to come specifically because of sonship. Those tribulations are coming specifically because of sonship. Listen, there's a big difference between the sufferings of this present time. Someone wanted to say to me, you know what? Those tribulations over there in Romans 8 are already kicking in. They did this a year ago. Those are already kicking in because the other day we were talking to somebody and, tell them about, this or that, or trying to invite them or doing whatever, and they said, no, I'm doing this. And they said, so those tribulations, I said, I just thought to myself, that is not the tribulations. The things that are happening to you, if they're not happening specifically because of sonship, that's not what this is referring to. This is when someone persecutes you because you're involved in sonship, and the only way it will stop is for you to quit your sonship. And if you quit, then all of these will go away. That's what they're geared to do. This next one says, or famine. What do you think of when you think of famine?
No food.
Okay, Gloria says no food. Okay? Is it possible because of sonship you could go hungry? It's absolute possibility that there is an advanced stage of your sonship in which, how about this? You say, I don't see how that could happen. Let me use Audie for example. I'd love to pick on Bob, but I'm going to pick on Audie today. Boy, I just want to do it to Bob so bad. Okay. Audie's at work, and one day, because his boss comes and he goes, I hear you're involved in this thing over there, and y'all are doing all this sonship stuff. And Audie goes, yeah. And he goes, well, here's the deal. You're either going to stop that or we're going to fire you. And not only are we going to fire you, we're going to do our best to make it sure that no one else hires you. Now, when that first happens, it's real easy to say, well, I'll just get a job somewhere else. But you know what? About the third month with no income, and the shelves are empty in the cabinet, how easy is it to sit down at the table with your family and say, the Bible says that, I could think of the verses right now to defend it. Are you ready? If a man that doesn't provide for his own house, worse than an infidel. I've got to provide. Bible says it. So I guess if I've got to walk away from this in order to provide, this is what I'm going to have to do. Can you see that? When your kids are going, I'm hungry, it's really hard to look at them and go, kids, we're in sonship. Deal with it. Well, that's not what you do, obviously. But you understand the point I'm making here. Things can get rough. Look at the word after famine. Because the word after famine is nakedness. Now, does that mean you're all going to become streakers? No. What is it talking about? Not even have the ability to get clothing. The things that everybody needs. By the way, can I remind you that while the Apostle Paul is in the dungeons of a Roman prison, he's having to ask somebody for a covering to keep from freezing down there because he doesn't have it. So when he's writing about this, he knows perfectly well where that's coming from. There is a way to undo all of that. All Paul has to do is recant. Just take it back. All that can go. Can you see someone applying that pressure? Look, all you've got to do is just deny this sonship stuff. Hey, you know what? Stop going to that church. If you'll come over here, we got folks over here can give you a job. You'll never lack again. This is what, and there's going to be, that pressure is going to be brought to bear. Here's the last one in the list. It's the seventh. The next one is peril. Paul talked about perils in the sea, perils of robbers, perils of my own countrymen. You know what perils are? I used to remember the old movie, The Perils of Pauline. You remember that? The perils are dangers, that your life is in danger. There are things that are actually happening to you. And the last one is death. We've talked about that one, that the sword represents death. Is it possible you could even give your life for sonship? Of course that's possible. But is there anybody out there that's just looking to kill people involved in sonship? No, not really. Because really, you don't know anybody that far along in sonship. But you get an assembly of fully educated sons, things can be see, this is the very opposite end of the wealth and prosperity movement. The closer you are to God, the more money you have. The more God's blessing you. The more possessions you'll have. They love that one. Paul doesn't preach that gospel. Paul's got another message. Now, you know why I'm hesitant to talk to you in detail about this. Or this is a hard thing to talk about. Because at the end, you want to have an altar call where everybody can come forward and renounce their sonship. Because who wants that kind of a life? By the way, that's why the Corinthians did what they did. They heard Paul talk about these things. They saw it happening in his life, and they thought, we're not signing up for that. It's like volunteering to get beat up. Ooh, can I get it twice today? Now I'm going to make a statement right here that's going to be difficult for us to understand at this point. It is a privilege and an honor to be counted worthy to suffer with Him in this matter. It is. Hard to understand that. But when you get there, you will see that for what it is. And you will look at that not as, and look, it gets even worse. I actually said it this way in the notes. The most prized possessions you own may go away. Those are tough. Those are tough. I'm not guaranteeing you they will. I'm saying it is a real possibility. Now you understand why I said this is what's going to separate us out. If all we're here for is the hoopla and the rah-rah and the all of that bit, I got news for you. It's not happening to you today, but there are things coming that make you forget all about the hoopla. Today in this session, you're going to know this. This is no game. We're not playing at something. This is real business for all the marbles. It's all going to be on the line here. And I'll be frank with you. The only time in my whole Christian life in which I have been truly afraid of anything has been when I came through this passage and looked at what's really sitting there and understood the price that may have to be paid to stay involved in my sonship life. Now that's the only time anything has ever given me pause. Because you know what it's always been before that? It's been bravado. It's been big talk. I hear people say it all the time. I've even said it. Well, I tell you what, I'll go to hell and spit in the devil's eye. That's big talk when you're not standing there. You have underestimated the pressure he is going to be able to bring to bear. Do you really want to? I keep thinking of this cartoon picture in my mind. There's this guy in the hospital bed. He looks like he's just seconds away from going. He's hooked up to all this stuff, IVs. He's got all of this stuff hooked up to him. And the preacher is standing over him with his Bible in his hand, and he's going, "Renounce the devil." And the caption, and the guy replies, "I'm in no shape to antagonize anybody." You get this idea that, we're just going to, and listen, I'm begging you. You can't go into the sonship education with just bravado. That is going to go away in an instant. Big talk. If you don't have this reinforced by this, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when you are going to come to a place where you're going to tip your hat to the rest of this assembly and say, "I'm done." And I need you to go in with your eyes open. I need you to see this for what it is. But you're not going to go in. God is not throwing you in the lion's den without preparing you before you go in. And by preparing you, I don't mean seasoning you up, with savory spices for their delectable meal. I just realized as I said it when I thought, season, what a bad choice of words. I see the lions with bibs. Never mind, but that you're going to be prepared. You're going to know that it's happening. By the way, you'll know the order of things. You'll know as a son who's first starting out with the policy of evil, You're going to know what to expect. It won't be the sword. You're not going to just be barely into the thing and the devil goes, I'm killing you unless you... That's not going to happen. Now, if you drive on Texas roads, you may take your life into your own hands, but that's not going to be the policy of evil. There's going to be a connected to your sonship. Let's talk about the second entity. By the way, I've only talked to you about two of the three, the policy of evil and the course of this world. We haven't even talked about the third one. By the way, the only reason we saw those two is because we saw them back in Proverbs in the exhortations, right? To deliver thee from the evil man and from the strange woman. You've seen two of the three. I haven't even talked. Family going, oh my gosh, there's a third one. And we'll talk about that. But the point I'm trying to make is the course of this world, right now, there's a general course of this world. It just kind of goes along. And right now, it doesn't give you too much problem. About the worst it is people see you on Sunday after. Actually, you come under it in two ways. First of all, the fact that you're going to church on Sunday, there's a population that looks at people going to church on Sunday and thinking, man, look at that. That's how they spend their Sunday. Then there's the folks that go to church and they're looking at you going, oh Lord, they're going at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Because you know the Bible says you have to go at 10 for Sunday school and 11 for the preaching service. And there's also a deal over in Revelation that says you must be out by noon.
To eat.
Yeah, so you can eat. Yeah, okay, Bertha said I didn't read it. I mean, you know, people look at those things like, if you don't do that, there's something wrong with you. Have you ever told anyone what time church meets? Did you ever get the response, wow, that's great. That sounds great. Is that the response you got? No, the response you... Huh? You're missing the cowboy game. Okay, what did you get?
I actually got I sleep in finally.
Oh, okay, yeah, somebody came to their senses. Okay. But you see, the course of this world, once you get to this place, the course of this world now begins to crank up, and you don't just have the policy of evil to deal with. Now you really do have the course of this world coming to bear on you as well. Now, again, I have more to say about that, but I kind of want to leave that until we get down to this particular part of the passage. But these three agencies are going to be employed to get you to walk away from your sonship life. Now, I'm not trying to scare you, but you know what? If you are scared of that, then maybe you're sensing the reality of what I'm talking about. So in that case, that would be a good thing. I'm not trying to scare you with it, but I am trying to sober us up to the reality of what this is. This is not a cakewalk. It's not a game. We're not just playing at it. This really has consequences to it. And your Father understands all of that. And because of that, these things are going to be utilized against you to make you drop out of church. Not to get you to quit believing in Jesus. They only have one goal in mind, and that is to make you stop your sonship life. And you can expect that opposition to come. By the way, the policy of evil, does anybody know how the policy of evil is going to work? Satan himself is not going to walk through those back doors with his little red pointy tail switching behind him. That is not how. Okay, but Karen's talking about, I'm going to say it for the DVD, you're talking about first you attack the message, try to get the message perverted, then you attack the messenger, try to get them to quit, and if they don't, then you discredit the messenger, so even if he doesn't shut up, nobody will pay any attention to it. But he's going to use what kind of agency to do that? People. Yes, he's going to use friends, he's going to use families, he's going to use other believers. Look, the lost world, you can kind of deal with that bunch, can't you? What else do you expect out of them? They're lost. But you're talking about other folks that name the name of Christ. And I tell you what, you're going to be looked at like the Antichrist incarnate. You're going to be viewed that way. Only for one reason. Your sonship education. That's the way it's going to come. And I mean, you talk about pressure, it's going to be pressure. Let me just make this for me a minute. Let me make this. Huh?
We're supposed to separate the wheat from chaff.
Well, I mean, that's going to get done. You won't have to try. That's going to get done. But let me talk about it for me. Do you know, when I say you could lose your most treasured possession, for me, that's really not about any of my stuff. If someone took, you ever had your house broken into, anybody steal your stuff? I've had that done. It was just stuff. I used to say it to my kids. My kids are like, oh my God. I remember when they called me at work and went, Dad, somebody broke in. They stole everything. I thought, great. I don't have to deal with that anymore. But you don't understand. They took this, and they took this, and they took this. And I go, okay. What are we going to do? I said, we do what everybody does. We get more stuff. It's the way it works. You get stuff, it breaks, you get more stuff. Or you get stuff, somebody stole it, and you get more stuff. When theirs breaks, they'll steal more stuff. Then you get more stuff. Just a cycle. It's not a big deal. Please don't come and steal my stuff now that I have said that to you.
You don't need it.
No big deal.
My stuff is worn out anyway.
But you got cool stuff.
I didn't. Man, I just created monsters all over right here. I even forgot where I was going with that. Thank you. It's not my stuff. You know what I know this may cost me? Well, you're looking at Billy, and I'm going to, she's at the, obviously she's at the top of the list. Everybody knows that. But you know what this may cost me in things? It may cost me this ministry. It might cost me this ministry. That the choice is either going to be, I'm going to quit. Have I seen other sonship ministries destroyed? More of them than are not. More than are not. I know that is a potential price. By the way, that's not different from the Apostle Paul. I'm not trying to put myself in league with the Apostle Paul. I'm just talking about the possibilities. Okay? I am not in the league with the Apostle Paul. You already knew that. I'm just saying that for the DVD. Remember what Paul said when he wrote back to Timothy? All those in Asia have forsaken me. Every one of those churches that he got established over there and got them going and wrote to them and visited them and preached to them and encouraged them, every one of them came to a place where they said, we're not following Paul anymore. And if that happens to Paul, see, I'm looking at it and think, Paul, if he did it, now that ought to really work, right? He gave them the 50-cent, presentation. This is Mike McDaniel. What can he give them? Well, let me tell you what. It's what the policy of evil offers up. And it's what the course of this world offers up. And it cost Paul all that ministry, went away. That may happen with me too. And you have to know, this is what I live to do. There's not anything else I want to do. I mean, in the end, it may be me and Billy and Buster doing sonship. And Buster's not really wholly-hearted committed. I'm just telling you now. Yes. He just, I don't want to talk about him. Yeah. He's just in it for the show. I'm not saying it will, But that's a possibility. Does that bother me? Well, sure. I don't want to do that. At the end of this, where may we be? I'm not saying I'm guaranteeing you all of these things will happen. Being put to death in this country for sonship right now would be pretty tough. Tougher than in the Roman government where Paul was. Tougher than that. Is it possible, though, that somebody could wind up in jail over that? Sure. Is it possible that government would take a look at this place and go, you know, we need to scrutinize them a little more? Which actually, in view of what's written in Romans 13, is an actual conundrum to me. It's a riddle to me that they would even, that you would think they would want sonship churches. But it's not going to happen that way. I'm just trying to sober us up, and I'm afraid, I'm not, I think we may have, if let me just say it like this. If you are only in it, I don't care if you're in this assembly or watching on the internet or on YouTube or you're up in North Texas, if you're only in this because this is your little way of thinking, this is the way to get the goods, this is my little spiritual high, this is where I'm going to, you know, I'm going to be on top and it's all rah, rah, rah and that kind of business. If that's all this is to you, we won't see you for long. Because this can only be handled by that. That's why this part of the establishment is so crucial. That's why I made the statement in the first session. I said, and now I've given you another clue, that no matter what happens, no matter what, that confidence you will not walk away from. That this thing is going to do in you what it's supposed to do, and what your Father has said can be absolutely trusted. And I know that this is not the Dale Carnegie course for getting people to sign up for Sonship. Can you imagine putting this one on the website to get people enrolled in Sonship? Wow, they'd be staying away by the millions, wouldn't they? Okay. I want to bring you to a verse. There was another group that saw the Apostle Paul and they thought, what a cool ministry. That's the way they viewed it all. Oh, what a cool ministry. And they saw Paul, by the way, in the book of Acts, Paul is recorded as not only doing some miraculous things, but he is casting out devils. By the way, he's carrying on a ministry to the Jews to tell them about their fall and diminishing. And God is authorizing that message through the sign wonders that Israel is supposed to look for. It verifies the truth of his message. He's been casting out devils, and there was a group of guys, can you believe they were looking at him and saying, man, how cool is that? We could cast out some devils. Let's go do it. So that's what they're going to do. And they don't realize what they're really involved in. They really don't. So I'm going to read the passage to you here and we'll take a look at it. Acts 19:11. And God wrought special miracles by the hands of Paul, so that from his body were brought unto the sick handkerchiefs or aprons, and the diseases departed from them, and evil spirits went out of them. Now, it's from Acts, this passage right here. If you've ever listened to some of those guys, I used to hear this guy on the radio. We had a broadcast from a church I used to work at in Shreveport, and the people before us had a broadcast, and they would always hawk for a small offering these blessed handkerchiefs. They never did the aprons because they cost more money. But the handkerchiefs, you could get them pretty cheap, you could bless them, and you could send out blessed handkerchiefs. In fact, one time, no kidding, I just have to say this, they were publicizing lucky roots. Get your lucky root. It became just a joke around the staff because we were all going, did you get those lucky roots in yet? I got to get me one of those. I'm going to put it on my keys, you know, my lucky root. I don't know what kind of root it was. I mean, I could just, anyway, lucky roots, blessed hankeries, all that business. You got to be kidding. Okay, I got to do this. Then, by the way, just for the record, that's what happened in that transition period in Acts. God is not doing that today. That's not happening. That's a failure to understand what Paul was doing and why, sonship, he was doing it for that message to the Jews. Okay. Then certain of the vagabond Jews, exorcists, took upon them to call over them which had evil spirits the name of the Lord Jesus, saying, we adjure you by... Did I skip a passage? Okay. We adjure you by Jesus whom Paul preacheth. And there were 7 sons of one Sceva, a Jew, and chief of the priest, which did so. And the evil spirit answered and said, Jesus I know, and Paul I know, but who are ye? Talking to these 7 sons of Sceva. Because they're in there. Now they're going, we got to do this thing. So they go, we adjure you by Jesus whom Paul preacheth. See, they're trying to get all of it in there. They're trying to get their formula right. If you can do it in the name of Jesus, and we'll qualify it. It's the one that Paul preaches. We've got it all in here. Did you see the devil just went, ooh, I've got to run off. That just scares me to death. Come on. Here's how it goes. And the man in whom the evil spirit was leaped on them and overcame them and prevailed against them, so they fled out of that house naked and wounded. He beat the tar out of them. Ripped their clothes off. Verse 17. And this was known to all the Jews and Greeks also dwelling at Ephesus, and fear fell on them all, and the name of the Lord Jesus magnified. I guess fear fell on them all. When the next time somebody said, let's go cast out some devils in the name of Jesus whom Paul preacheth. If you knew about that, you know what you'd be saying? Shut up. We are not doing that. You know what happened to those 7 sons of Sceva? You want to get beat up? Have your clothes ripped off by some maniac? Oh, brother. I could just see it now. I know this devil-possessed guy. He's about 7'2" and he weighs 400 pounds. Let's go cast the devils out of him. He'd just rip your arms off of you. Beat you to death with them. You know, they were not able to produce what Paul produced, were they? And let me tell you, there are things that only a son is going to be able to accomplish. No one, that other folks are not going to be able to accomplish. That's just not going to happen. These folks did not understand, had no idea of the dangers that they were involved in. But what we're talking about with the policy of evil that comes against a son or a daughter who has reached that point in the education, you're not going to be out of your league and you're not going to be over your head. But the education will enable you to handle that and to go through that. Take a look at the checkpoint that you're going to go through. I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice. Does anybody know what a sacrifice is? What was an Old Testament sacrifice? An Old Testament sacrifice was a ritually slaughtered animal. Do you know every sacrifice had its head cut off? You're going to be asked to present your body as a living sacrifice. Again, not the Dale Carnegie course for how to win friends and influence believers. It's almost like, don't tell them that. They'll all run away. Paul is going to tell you that. He's not going to make any bones about it. He's going to call it your reasonable service. So, let me take you back to Romans 8:35. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? And then he follows with those 7 categories of things that you're going to suffer as a son in that order. I'm just going to say to you, those things are not a bluff. You're looking at the real deal. So what's the response? The response is this. Nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors. Why isn't it enough to be a conqueror? Why do you need to be more than a conqueror? Because that's what's going to come out of this. When you get to that place that those things are happening, you have the glorious opportunity not to just, oh, I just can't wait to get beat up because I'm in sonship. It's to be more than a conqueror in the midst of all of that. And again, we have a lot to say about that when we get over there. But all of this, folks, let me just try to wind this up. All of this is written so that when you get to this verse right here, Romans 12:1, all of that is written in Romans 8. So when you get to Romans 12:1 and you're asked to present your body as a living sacrifice, without hesitation, you will say yes. And without the effectual working of that in your inner man, you're going to get to Romans 12:1 and say, ooh, I need to think about that. That's what that's geared to do. That's the importance of this particular area. That's right here. Now, I've said some things in the notes that I have not said to you publicly here, but I am going to say, I do have one more thing to show you, just one more. And that's this. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose. And everybody looks at that very generally and says, oh, well, I love God and I've been called to... You know what that is? You know what that's a reference to? Do you know who that's describing? Sons and daughters involved in the sonship education. That's what that is describing. To them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose. And you know what that purpose is? To be educated, to think like your Father, to live like your Father, and to labor with Him in what He's doing. That's the ones this is geared to. That's why that is only true, that all things are working together for good to that group. Otherwise, He would have said, and we know that all things work together for good for all who are saved. That's not what He said. This is a group that He has in mind. He's been talking to this group since verse 14 of this chapter. That makes sense for you? Okay, now that I've given you every reason to quit, next week when there's 3 of you that show back up, we're going to come back to Romans 8:28, and now we're going to start working through the details of this passage. In the meantime, take this week to read through this passage and get familiar with the things that are there. Look for things that are in there and ask yourself questions about it and see what you can find. Don't let next week be the next time your eyes fall on these verses. I'm begging you that we got to get this right. Okay.